Hi, this is Benoy, your host of the Solar Maverick Podcast. I would like to thank Summit Ridge Energy for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. As the nation's leading commercial solar company, Summit Ridge Energy merges financial innovation and industry-leading execution to deliver clean, locally generated energy. This has made Summit Ridge one of the fastest-growing energy companies in America. Since launching in 2017, the company has deployed over $2 billion into clean energy assets and controls a development pipeline of more than 3 gigawatts that will provide solar power to homes and businesses nationwide. Learn more about Summit Ridge Energy at srenergy.com and connect with them on LinkedIn. We'll also have their information in the notes of the podcast. Thank you, Summit Ridge Energy, for sponsoring this episode of the Solar Maverick Podcast.
One of the most famous alumni from D.E. Shaw is Jeff Bezos. He left D.E. Shaw to start Amazon, and my boss used to work for him, which is kind of an amazing story. And then I ended up actually working for Tesla, and I worked actually for Elon Musk's cousin. And I used to be in meetings with Elon. This was like 11 years ago. So that was like an amazing experience to work for obviously a very talented company and really smart people, and gave me the confidence to then start my own business. We're working on getting Elon Musk eventually to come.
Let's go. Whoa.
Hello and welcome to the Solar Maverick Podcast, where solar meets entrepreneurship and experience. I'm your host, Benoy Thanjan, so let's get into it.
Hi, this is Benoy, your host of the Solar Maverick Podcast. I was interviewed on a podcast last year, November 22nd, 2023. It's called What Are You Made Of by Mike C-Roc. It's a great show, and he's had amazing guests on the show, and I appreciate him giving me an opportunity to be on his podcast. And this is me talking about many different things related to the podcast, having a business, and the elements of becoming successful. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Solar Maverick Podcast. Thanks for listening, and let's get into it.
We are jamming this Monday here. The Eagles beat the Dolphins yesterday. I'm in a little celebratory mood. I'm actually wearing my Eagles hat. I don't usually wear this hat. Can't see it because I got it on backwards. But, I'm excited, man. And the Phillies play today. It's a great time to be a Philly sports fan. And my guest today actually happens to be a Giants fan, a Yankees fan, he told me. So I don't know what he's trying to start to show off on a band. I'm just kidding. I got Benoy Thanjan in the house. He is the CEO and founder of Reneu Energy, which is a solar company that develops commercial and industrial solar projects and utility scale solar projects, right? Yeah. He is also the most popular podcast in solar called the Solar Maverick Podcast. Who would ever thought we would have podcasts about solar? All this guy did. Benoy, welcome to the show.
Yep, thank you, Mike. I'm excited to be here. You're making great content. I love Philadelphia. I have a lot of friends from Pennsylvania, Philadelphia area, and it's amazing the kind of sports dynasty that's happening right now in Philly as an outsider.
We used to be the watchers, watching other people win all the time, and now we're, having a little success. And my son doesn't know the difference. Like, he doesn't understand because he's grown up and the Philly teams have been good while he, a kid. I didn't have that pleasure, but it is what it is. So anyway, I want to welcome to the show. We start the show the same way every time, Benoy, and that's with this question that's written on the wall behind me. What are you made of?
That is a very complicated question, but there's a lot of different components. It's really what I'm made of is leading with passion. Basically, there's so many different things I want to say. It's just difficult being resilient, positive, leading with value, discipline. As you know, discipline equals freedom, putting in the work, consistency each and every day, having a positive outlook. As an entrepreneur, there's so many different ups and downs and, getting through that and really having goal setting, differentiating yourself from everyone else through adding value and hard work. There's just so many different components. I could go on and on. I mean, I'm passionate about sustainability and renewable energy. I'm lucky to find what I truly love doing, and I'm making it a positive impact to the world. So
I love it. And a lot of that answer has to do with experiences that you've gone through in your life, your story, so to speak. Because we wouldn't be talking about resilience. We wouldn't be talking about positive attitude and discipline if we hadn't experienced something in the past. So Benoy, that being the case, I want to know your story, man. Where did it all start for you? Take us back.
Sure. My parents are actually immigrants from India. I was born in beautiful New Jersey. And then we initially were in Bronx, New York. And at that time, they didn't really have much money. And I saw like the hard work that they had to put in to be successful. They would leave very early in the morning, come very late at night from work. They also both had their own businesses. And my mom's actually a pediatrician who has her own practice still in the Bronx. And my dad had a lighting company. He worked for a corporate company as an electrical engineer. And then he decided to go out on his own. And since the age of 12, 13, I've been working at both my parents' businesses. So I've seen the highs and lows of having your own business. And even at 17 or 18, like I was basically running my dad's business at certain times. So it was interesting telling like 55 to 60-year-old salespeople as a 17 to 18-year-old. But I learned so much from those experiences. Luckily, to have parents who were entrepreneurial and build, a great lifestyle for them, and also obviously for their kids to be able to go to schools that we wanted to go to. And we eventually then moved to northern New Jersey, still very close, obviously, to, the Bronx, New York. And, the Bronx wasn't like it was like 20 years ago. It's really gotten a lot nicer. And so I think that like being really in an environment where you saw your parents kind of grow and take these risks and become successful was really helpful for me to then eventually start my own company.
Yeah. And so where do you live now? Do you live in still New York or Jersey?
So yeah, I live in New Jersey. I live in Jersey City, New Jersey, which is right across the water from New York City. It's a big commuter town into New York.
Yeah. I used to go to Jersey City to visit some buddies from college. Hoboken, Jersey City. We'd take some trips to Manhattan sometimes. And then in the summertime, we'd have a shore house down at the Jersey Shore. We'd meet them there. So did you go to the beach at all? Or were you Hamptons or Jersey Shore when you went?
Oh, so I'm big Jersey Shore, Spring Lake, Seagirt.
Yeah. Manasquan.
Yeah. And I still actually go to the shore. And I actually might be going this weekend. I mean, I think the great thing about the shore, it's so close by and you're basically in a beach area. I mean, from Jersey City to Spring Lake's only an hour without traffic, going from a big city to a very quiet beach town. And it's great during the summers. And I've made a lot of friends and a lot of business connections actually from that as well. And doing a short house with different people, it's almost like old times when we catch up and people are successful and doing different things. And it's a great experience if everyone who has an experience. It's not all just like the show Jersey Shore.
No. There is some of that. There is some of that. Yeah, I live at the beach here in Maryland on the coast. So my town here is wild in the summer and then it chills out in the wintertime. And I'm used to that. What do you think the difference is between people that go to the Jersey Shore and then those that choose the Hamptons instead?
Interesting. That's a great question. I have friends who go to the Hamptons. I've only actually been to the Hamptons once or twice from, Jersey City or New Jersey. It's actually not that convenient. What I like about the Jersey Shore compared to the Hamptons? Like Jersey Shore is just a lot more laid back. You can get away with jeans and shorts going to a really nice place where, the clubs are all about like really dressing up, dress to impress.
In Hamptons, right?
In the Hamptons. Yeah, I apologize. I didn't say that. It's beautiful out there. It's just, I think it brings a different crowd too, like a crowd from New York City that's extremely wealthy. Whereas the Jersey Shore is like all over kind of the Northeast. And it's crazy now, like the Jersey Shore is an international destination. Like you meet a lot of people from Europe, but Pennsylvania, you have Staten Island, parts of New York, obviously New Jersey, even Maryland. Like I'm a big fan of Ocean City, Maryland, and Dewey Beach in Delaware and in Pennsylvania. Just there's so many different things that are so close by from driving distance. Yeah. And just to get from Jersey City to Long Island, especially during rush hour, to get through like the Holland Tunnel and then the Queens, I think they call it now the JFK tunnel, and to get, it's just so much more convenient.
Yeah, I agree, man. So where did you go to college, by the way?
Oh, so I went to NYU. I was in the Stern School of Business. I actually double majored in finance and economics.
Is that named after Howard Stern?
Don't worry, it's Leonard N. Stern, actually, who's a real estate mogul. And his son, Lenny Stern, actually listens to my podcast.
Oh, get out.
Interesting.
That's awesome. And so you went to school. What did you study in business particularly?
Oh, so finance and economics. I double majored. So I'm a financial. That's my background. I got an MBA as well from Rutgers University as well. So
okay. And then when you came out, what happened first for you in your career? Like you start your own business or did you go work for somebody?
Yeah, I worked for somebody. So like I actually worked at a hedge fund called D.E. Shaw and Company. It's actually one of the biggest hedge funds now. And I actually used to go to David Shaw's office as an intern where I would talk to him about different trading anomalies and the different trading strategies and like why we're doing as well. So it was just an amazing experience as like a 19-year-old, and this person's a billionaire, and I'm going and telling him like what's happening on the trading floor. I basically worked initially in accounts payable, group, but then I on the trading floor, like analyzing the different trading positions and accounting for it. Then I would meet with the controller, and then I would go to David Shaw's office, which is like phenomenal. Actually, one of the most famous alumni from D.E. Shaw is Jeff Bezos. He left D.E. Shaw to start Amazon, and my boss used to work for him, which is kind of an amazing story. And then after I graduated from Rutgers, I worked at Deloitte & Touche, which is like a financial accounting firm, but they have a consulting group. And I worked in energy. And then I worked at 3 years at a healthcare company doing corporate development. And then I worked at a private equity firm that actually invested in renewable energy projects in New Jersey.
Well, what stemmed the move into different companies? Was it you were searching for something, or was it always like, maybe I want a bigger game, or what was it?
Mike, I'm always searching for sure. I had that amazing experience at the hedge fund, but I wanted to get more like general sort of experience. I worked at a company called Ernst & Young, which is another like big four accounting firm. And then I always had in the back of the mind that I want to work for someone or different companies for 5 to 7 years and then take that experience and start my own company. So I worked at Ernst & Young for 13 months. Then I ended up working for my dad's business for another year. And then I went to grad school at Rutgers University with an MBA in finance. And then I was actually an intern there. And I got a full-time offer after I graduated. My second year of my MBA, I was working there part-time. And I got into energy because one of the partners, the head of the energy group, wanted me to work with her. And then, she ended up giving me a full-time job after. It's interesting because now she's like the head of the Deloitte Renewable Energy. She calls me for work. So it's interesting because how things change. I was the intern and then started my own company 10 to 15 years later. And they do a lot of work in renewable energy. And I've actually spoken at their conference. So, and then, was working more in the consulting role at Deloitte and Energy. And I really wanted to be on the investment side. So that's why I moved to a private equity fund that invested in renewable energy projects. It was not solar at the time. It was landfill gas, biomass, hydro. And I thought solar was going to be the next huge thing. This was like 13 years ago. And I'm telling everyone, and people are like, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm like, I did enough research to know that this is going to happen. So I worked for a solar installer called Vanguard Energy Partners in New Jersey. They're one of the largest like commercial industrial solar installers. I was doing like project finance. That's my background in finance. And then they ended up having layoffs because the incentives collapsed. And then I ended up actually working for Tesla. And I worked actually for Elon Musk's cousin. And I used to be in meetings with Elon. This was like 11 years ago. So that was like an amazing experience to work for obviously a very talented company and really smart people, and gave me the confidence to then start my own business.
This is the first one you started? The one you're working in now?
Reneu Energy. I started the company 11 years ago. Most solar companies have gone bankrupt since then, maybe 70 to 80% of them, but we're still around. But I think, having that experience through my parents' business, all those different work experiences before working for Tesla, they were my first client. Before I started the company, I negotiated that to be like a 1099. And then eventually, we started as an environmental commodity brokerage company because I started their environmental commodities trading desk. And then we moved to project development, podcast. I was talking about how focused on sustainability and making the biggest impact. So I thought developing projects, we're actually developing one of the first projects for the New York Housing Authority on 20 different buildings in Manhattan.
That'll be on a roof, solar panels?
Rooftop solar, yeah. And then we're actually hiring residents from the New York Housing Authority to install the solar with us. And we've also had a career fair 2 weeks ago because we think, renewable energy, it's growing exponentially. So just finding people careers.
Did you get into building sales teams and all that to be selling them to residential people like a lot of people are doing?
No, we don't do residential sales. I have experience with residential sales because Tesla SolarCity did a lot of residential sales initially. You do commercial, industrial, and utility scale. Yeah. I like doing the bigger projects because the amount of time and the amount of returns are a lot higher than residential sales. And honestly, most of our business comes from referrals from our existing clients. And as I mentioned, like the podcast, the Solar Maverick Podcast that we have is one of the most popular podcasts in solar. We get so many referrals from it. So we don't actively have a big sales team. It's like 2 people, 3 people. It's not like 20 people, 30 people. We can't even handle the amount of sales or opportunities we're getting now, which is
awesome, man. Let me ask you about this then, because I want to get into this conversation about sustainability. Do you think that there's technology out there that where we could turn water in and it could run vehicles and it's just being held off because of the money that's in fossil fuels?
I agree. I think there's the technology out there, but a lot of it's being stopped because there's a lot of people who have made a lot of money with fossil fuels. They don't want to adapt or change. And, they have a lot of lobbying dollars to basically make sure that it's not a priority. But I know from people that the technology is there. It's just unfortunate that, and we see this with renewable energy and electric vehicles, even hydrogen as well, that, unfortunately, you're going against big companies and monopolies who they don't want you to disrupt their business, or they're going to try to slow it down as much as possible.
So that's happened in solar as well? When you guys are doing your thing and there's people that you just, how has solar pushed back enough to be able to, where did they get the power, the weight behind them to fight that battle, to continue on and be obviously an option now?
Yeah, I think it's really due to the economics right now. Like solar energy is the cheapest form of electricity, and it's more like a technology than a fuel, because every year the cost of the solar panels are going down, and also the efficiency, meaning how much sunlight it actually can convert into energy, is increasing as well. It's kind of similar to Moore's law with computer chips, and they call it actually Swanson's law in solar. The other thing too is you're independent from the grid in a certain case, and once battery storage becomes economical, then you don't necessarily have to deal with blackouts. People want to be energy independent. Now we're getting more and more blackouts because of the aging infrastructure, because you're getting power from a power plant, and then you go through transmission, distribution of the lines. And when there's as we get more storms and things, the network is falling apart. So a lot of people are choosing solar energy as well because it's free energy, right? It's basically, you have that from the sun, and then once storage becomes more and more economical, you could store that and then use it at night and with electric vehicles. And then also energy reliability and independence. I think most Americans, want that.
And eventually, will cars have solar panels on them so they don't have to be plugged in?
I think it's in Holland. They have car covered with solar panels, and it never needs to be charged, which is pretty cool. So the technology is expanding exponentially. You're going to see they don't even charge the vehicle just based on sun itself. And then as storage as well, it gets better and better, lithium ion batteries and some of these other technologies.
Yeah. And then you think about all these oil companies and fossil fuel companies going to do, and these countries that rely on oil, and that's their main thing. It's I think I have some cognition sometimes when I'm interviewing people that just come to me. But I think oil is a big part of Russia, right?
It is.
And so I'm just curious if the conflict that they're having now, the reason they're raising so much hell now, is because they see that the oil is going to be an issue, as far as the market for oil is going to be an issue. So I don't know. I'm just throwing something out there.
No, that's a great point. So if we had more electric vehicles on the highway, or the majority, this whole oil thing with basically Russia limiting the oil supply to Europe to basically hurt their economy, they wouldn't be able to do that. And that's the same thing as well. How many Americans have died in war in the Middle East because of oil, because we need it. And if we're able to produce it through electric cars, and we're then not dependent on the Middle East like before, because that's part of the reason actually why I got into renewable energy or solar is it's a way of the United States of being energy independent from the Middle East. And there's so many wars that we're getting in because of that. And if it's not the issue, then what can, other than obviously, terrorist acts and things? That's a long, complicated story. But we're seeing Dubai and some of these Middle Eastern, they're investing in tourism. They're investing in sports, buying, soccer players and soccer leagues, the
golf, live.
They're using oil money because they realize in the future it's not going to be there. So they're trying to diversify.
I got so much going on with my businesses and family and everything. Sometimes you just need some time to have a conversation with someone to start thinking something different. I haven't had a lot of time to think about this stuff, honestly.
Sure. There's so many,
you know what I mean? And so with that being said, with wars going on too, I wonder, does solar play any part in weapons or the ship's capabilities, the submarines? Are they using solar at all?
Yeah, so they're using solar-related technology in, warships, submarines, satellites. We're using a lot of satellites technology as well. The military has actually electric vehicles and they're basically using solar and batteries. They're actually more ahead of the general U.S. population with their incorporation. because it's a competitive advantage. Like, think about it. It's like distributed energy, and then you could move it, and then, you're not dependent like oil, or you're not dependent on like having energy from some source that's far away. How do you get that electricity? So they're moving these solar panels. It's pretty cool how like the U.S. military is pretty advanced when it comes to renewable energy. And they'll basically dictate the future because, they're using a lot of this technology to basically win or have an advantage in conflicts or wars. So
now, what is the biggest challenge for you and your company right now? When you wake up in the morning, what are you thinking about? Because, we don't usually think about the good stuff a lot of times when we first wake up in the morning. We're thinking about the challenges that we're facing and things we got, I got to deal with this. Yeah. Whatever it is. What is that for you and your company or the industry you're in?
So, it's interesting. I wake up and I'm like, there's so much opportunity. And it's like, there's certain things that I want to focus on. How can I neutralize the distractions?
Yeah.
Because there's so many people reaching out all the time. Hey, like, can you help us do this? We have this great idea. Like, I listened to the podcast. And so it's really for me, like, just staying focused on what we're trying to do and saying no to a lot of things. The great thing is like the renewable energy industry, you'll see it's going to be one of the fastest growing industries for 30, 40, 50 years to come. And so it's interesting. I try to always be positive. I don't know if you've heard of Joe Dispenza. He basically talks about how you have to always have positive self-talk. So yeah, in the morning when you wake up, you're tired, you're thinking negatively. What I do is I automatically change that to a positive, or I say, what 3 affirmations? Why am I fortunate? It's very easy to think of those 3 things.
Gratitude.
That help kind of like gear up for the day, because when you start with positivity, then your output is so much better, especially in the morning.
Isn't it funny though? You wake up in the morning and for whatever reason, you don't wake up in a great mood all the time. Like the first part, everybody has their different length of time they get to that point. But it's always like when you first wake up, you're like, is it Saturday? Is it Monday? Is it? And then you're like, what do I got to deal with today? And then my thing though, the first thing that helps me is I just say, thank you. I woke up another day, man. Thank you for all the opportunity. Thank you for, and I just go through a list and it helps me get to the point where like I'm out of that other mode, whatever you want to call that stuff. The other thing I wanted to ask you about AI, how does AI play a part in solar right now?
I mean, AI is like obviously being incorporated through like basically analyzing how the different solar projects are doing, analyzing the performance when it comes to asset management is the big thing. The usage of drones as well, where to kind of fly over to find like different issues. I mean, there's so much incorporation of AI into like, 3D printing, designs, and when you talk about solar panels or electric vehicles, it's just amazing to me. And it's still early, even the sales process, right? How can we make it more efficient? AI responding to emails or like chat if someone's reaching out, or, preliminary like sort of phone systems to basically qualify who the person is, who's the right person to speak to. And to me, it's still like early with AI, but it's amazing to me how quickly it's getting incorporated. And also like if you look at like manufacturing of solar panels, it's a lot more AI and robotics than like physical people. Like when you look at the back in the assembly lines of like Ford or the Model T and like what it is now, it's just amazing with robots and AI. Like you've gotten a lot of humans not in the actual manufacturing or construction process.
Yep, it's amazing. It is amazing. I'm excited about it. I don't fear it. I'm excited about it. I think excitement is a better emotion, like you're talking about quantum. Let's talk about quantum for a second, since you brought up Dr. Joe Dispenza. How is quantum technology going to affect renewable energy? I don't know. I mean, I don't even know if you looked at that, but quantum is like really identifying and studying small particles, like going down deeper past the atom. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I don't know if you've looked at that and understand any of that part, because you're a very intelligent guy from what I've seen already, but sometimes people like may not stray from solar. They may stay in their lane. I'm a guy that like got stuck in the quantum from listening to Dr. Joe Dispenza and then going deeper. I didn't know if there's any relation there.
There's definitely a relation. It's just I haven't had the chance to actually go deeper. There's so much. We're actually so busy, like we can't even keep up with what's going on.
I thought I'd ask, and now I know after this show. Now you're going to be like, you're going to be thinking about this. Like
I'm going to be thinking research it for sure. Like I'm a finance person, but I really like getting into the weeds and the technical sorts of stuff. Like people think I'm an engineer when I'm coming to these sites or on the rooftops, because they're like, wow, you know a lot about it, this stuff. But it's also spending a lot of time with engineers and really researching. And like quantum is definitely like something, that I'm really interested in. And, like electric vehicles, I worked at Tesla, so I had a lot of exposures. I grew up loving like Back to the Future, like Doc and them coming up. And that's created a lot of people in the renewable energy sector love those movies and try to replicate what they were doing. So
yeah, that's awesome, man. So talk to me about the podcast. As we wrap up here, Benoy, I really appreciate your time. I want to know about podcasting. Number one, you have a successful podcast. Are you also guesting on shows besides mine? Like, are you consistently going out on shows?
Oh, yeah. So consistently going out on shows and then actually interviewing as well, obviously, different people within the renewable energy industry. I started the podcast in 2018. So we've been around for 5 years. There's 146 episodes. And at that time, there was not many solar podcasts. And it's amazing to me because it was just in the beginning, I was just interviewing my friends in the solar industry.
Yep.
But now we're getting like the top people in the industry. For example, like we're having Jigger Shaw come. He's the head of the Department of Energy. He basically manages $200 billion that the U.S. government's investing in renewable energy. So like it's amazing to see the progress. And to me, this goes back to the beginning of your first question. How much impact like the podcast has had. Like so many people will reach out to me both in college or mid-career. Hey, I went into renewable energy because I listened to your podcast, or this helped actually build my company, or this one concept you talked about, how people be more sustainable. I created a business from it. And it's just amazing to me because you don't necessarily meet everyone, right? And it's like, you're just kind of interviewing people, creating your own content, not in front of a crowd. But then once you go to like solar events or people reach out to you, or even randomly, I'll be having dinner in New York City with friends and some person will come, hey, are you the host of the Solar Maverick Podcast? I'm like, yeah, so it's like almost, it's crazy because it's a niche podcasting. There's a huge demand for it because there's not enough quality content. Like I love Joe Rogan and obviously what he's doing, but that's more for the obviously mainstream, but we're working on getting Elon Musk eventually to come.
Let's go. Well, besides just recording the show and being niched, what kind of things can you tell people that are podcasters out there that helped grow your show? Besides, because niche is a big thing, obviously. Doing the show is a big thing, obviously. But what other things did you do that, got you view listeners or whatever?
Sure. Yeah, so I think like going on other shows and also getting your guests to spread the word about it. Like we have a newsletter and then audiograms that provide like great quality content, or videos, like just quick snippets. We find that LinkedIn is a great for what we do, like a niche solar podcast. And it's amazing how much engagement we get through that. And then also I think like having the picture of the host, I know you do on the podcast, are like none of the other renewable energy shows except one or two actually have like the host.
Are you talking about the square on the podcast thing?
The square on the podcast thing, yeah. That makes a big difference. And then really like getting quality guests and then having transparent conversations. And so like the really experienced solar person's going to listen to it because he's getting content that he probably can't. And the other thing that we differentiate is I'm a practitioner in the industry. It's not a purely like a media company. So I could ask better questions. And then I'm not always promoting myself where the other podcasters do. I'm really promoting the guests and then try to figure out. So that's just being authentic and, being your real self. I think, people feel like they know me because I'm pretty transparent on the episodes.
Authentic,
authenticity and being your true self. People could tell even listening on a podcast. And if you're just pretending to, at the end of the day, you have to be your authentic self. And that's what people like that and appreciate.
I love that. I talk about that all the time, Benoy. I don't know. You didn't even know that. And you brought that up. Authenticity, man. Being yourself, knowing who you are, and leaning into it. That's what that one is all about, by the way. For you and everybody listening, this brand, that one came from, I want that one. What was that one actor's name? That one. I've heard that before. I build my brands around things I've heard of before. I have a company called Way More. I want way more of that. How do you get way more of that, right? That one is about being that one and leaning into it. And I love that you said that, man. So great place to wrap the show up today. Benoy, thank you so much for being here. Guys, go check out Benoy's podcast. It's about solar. It's about the topic of renewable energy, but dealing with solar. And it's called the Solar Maverick Podcast. And it's got great guests. And would you say the Secretary of Energy is coming on?
Yeah, so the head of the Department of Energy is coming on the podcast. He's in charge of $200 billion that the U.S. is going to invest in.
It's a little bit of money.
By the way, the podcast is also about entrepreneurship as well.
Okay.
So solar entrepreneurship. So
Yeah, let's go. Let's go support our guy Benoy, guys. And thank you so much for being here, Benoy. Thank you all for watching or listening, however you're consuming this content. It's your boy C-Roc in the building in That One Studio on the What Are You Made Of show. Till next time, be that one.
Thanks for listening to the Solar Maverick Podcast. The Solar Maverick Podcast is brought to you by Reneu Energy. We're a solar development and consulting firm. If you believe that this podcast is adding value to you, please give us a 5-star review and share with those that you think could benefit from this information. Please email all questions, suggestions, and feedback to info@reneuenergy.com. That's info@reneuenergy.com. The Solar Maverick Podcast is produced by Podcast Laundry and executive produced by Benoy Thanjan and Kevin Y. Brown.